I would present to you now one way of teaching ethics and research integrity. It's an approach where we start by asking the participants to tell something about themselves in terms of what kind of research they are doing, what is their academic background, to describe briefly the research project they are involved in, and also identify ethical challenges in their own project. And some of you have filled out such a self-declaration form and sent it to me. Not all of you, 5 I think. And what are the characteristics of this approach? The SDM, self-declaration, it should be SDA, because it's an approach, it's not a method. It is a bottom-up approach. What does bottom-up mean? It starts with accounts, narratives from you. It is a Socratic approach. What does a Socratic approach mean? Have you heard about Socrates? Who was Socrates? Philosopher?
That's all.
He's considered the founding father of Western philosophy. Western philosophy. Socrates never wrote anything. And Socrates did philosophy in a very particular way. His office, he didn't have an office. His office was the marketplace where he went around asking people, carpenters, physicians, lawyers, politicians, women, slaves, what is courage? What is friendship? What is wisdom? What is justice? What is oh, no, he didn't say that. And then the people with whom he was talking, they suggested, yes, justice is this, temperance is this. And then Socrates asked questions and showing that the implications of this particular definition was too narrow or had consequences that made they had to continue to ask and try to answer. So the Socratic approach is an approach that takes the normative perceptions of participants as its point of departure. Do you know what normative means? Normative has something to do with values, ethical values. Norms we can define as action guidance. And third, the third characteristic of this approach is that it is participatory. It is not I am lecturing you. On the contrary, it's dialogical, that we reflect together based on propositions you make. You know what the original ancient Greek word for think, reflect, is? It's dialoge, which literally speaking means dialogue with yourself. That is, reflection is not a solitary thing. Reflection takes place between yourself, your conscious self, and the rest of you. How many of you have a mother tongue language?
Oh, you mean the language you usually think?
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. All of you have.
Yes.
Does anyone of you remember how you learned that language? But you are absolutely sure you have it. My professor in philosophy, he made this language analogy. He says, all of us also have not only a mother tongue language, but also a mother tongue morality. Look at children, they are playing. Suddenly one of them starts crying, and you intervene to stop the chaos. And one of the others said, it was not my mistake. It was not my fault. Or try to distribute sweets between a group of children. I give you 2, I give you just half. Then the children will react. It's not fair. It's not just. So children start using moral concepts very early in their life. Where does it come from? Plato said, I wrote my PhD in philosophy on Plato, who was the most famous student of Socrates. It's a mystery. But my professor in philosophy, Knut Erik Trane, he said, probably the morality that characterizes each of us as individuals is a morality we learned in the same period we learned our mother tongue language. And he adds in an interview, said, even philosophers, when they are not sitting in their office writing scholarly articles, criticizing each other, when they go home, they are not living their theories. They are living their mother tongue morality. And that's, in a way, the basic reason why Socrates did philosophy in this way. He said, every human being is a morally competent being. Because all of us, we have a language, a mother tongue language, and we have a mother tongue morality. I studied mathematics for 2 years before studying medicine and theology. And in the math class, there was an asymmetric relation between the math professor and the rest of us. He or she knew much more. But when I teach ethics to people, I have to take into account that I, as a professor in medical ethics, I am not more able to make moral decisions than any of my students. Well, that means that will have some very important didactic consequences, because what should we then aim at when we teach ethics in general, and research ethics and research integrity in particular? And the way I see it is, the aim of this teaching is to stimulate each of you to start reflecting upon your own morality and reflect, can I apply this morality automatically in my practice? Or do I need to adjust to comply with the rules of play of being a healthcare professional, to comply with the rules of play of doing research? So that is the point of departure of Socrates. All of us are morally competent, okay? As a professor in ethics, I know more about the history of ethics than you, about ethical theories, concepts and principles. I know more about the grammar of ethics, but I'm not more able than you to make a moral decision. And that is the point of departure of Socrates, and this is the point of departure of this approach to teaching ethics in research and research integrity. And the aim was that all of you should fill in this self-declaration note. Some of you have done. This and this note is based on what we do in the PhD program at the Faculty of Medicine. Every year there are around 300 PhD students. They have to go through a mandatory course in research methodologies, and this course includes also philosophy of science and research ethics. And we ask, and it's mandatory, everybody has to fill in this form before they attend the course. Their name, institute, academic field, basic qualifications, what are the main aim of the research project. They have to describe the methodology and also state what is the current state of your project. Have you already published something? Have you submitted, or have you experienced the refusal from a journal? And then they are asked to identify ethical problems in their own project. This was how the self-declaration note looked like from the autumn of 2017. Before that, it was identical, but there was one added question. Ethical problems in relation to your project, the same. But then, outline 3 challenges, problems that you have encountered so far as a PhD student. And the students' answers to this was a gold mine when it came to understanding how they experienced their life as a PhD student, as a young researcher. We had a Skype meeting with some colleagues from Turkey, Greece, the Netherlands, about a project called Virtue, where it's a project to develop face-to-face ways of teaching research ethics and research integrity. And we discussed this self-declaration note, and I don't know whether we finally agreed on it, but I suggested that we should add a 3rd question to make it even more explicit, the Socratic approach. In your view, what characterizes a good researcher and good research? So that they come prepared to the session, having reflected also upon this question.